That was great. I just got to check something here. Okay. I don't think that's lit. And it's been bothering me since I sat there. I know it was lit, Vicki, when you got it, but it went out. So I'm going to break protocol here. Yeah. That was close. All right. Thanks everyone for being here today, and thanks for having me and listening to my story. I hope you get something out of it. I've put it together over the week and struggled because I have to kind of cut it down to a certain length of time. And I could talk about this stuff for hours. I could talk about this for 5 or 6 hours, but you don't want that, and I don't really want that. Juliet, she's like, oh, yeah. But if you have questions, ask me. When you see me around, there's a lot here. It's kind of complicated, and I'll try to do my best to explain it as well as I can. So I'm going to be moving quickly, especially through the beginning, because I just want to set the stage so that you guys can understand where my mind was and the framework that I was in order to use TWEBA, which was like a brand new thing, and use it effectively in the health arena. So we're going back and we're talking 12 years ago that this occurred. Everything that occurs here occurs from the beginning of December to the middle of February. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's in a very short time frame that it all comes together. And the title of my presentation is TWEBA and Spiritual Blocks, or something like that. How to access your personal power. And what we're going to do today is we're going to look at an example when spiritual blocks were not present. Okay, and we're going to see what happens when they're not present. We take a lot of time in our Sunday lessons and in our classes and in our groups talking about we're over here and we're going to TWEBA stuff, and there's a block here and there's a block there and this is a block and this is an issue. And sometimes we forget that we're trying to get somewhere, or at least I do, and sometimes it's not so easy to see where you're trying to go if you don't really know what it looks like over there. So today, we're going to go here, and by a number of circumstances, and with Reverend Sarah's help, I was able to get into a position where I didn't have any blocks. I wasn't restricted, and some somewhat miraculous stuff occurred. I say somewhat, a lot of people feel that I'm underplaying that, but I'll let you guys decide that. You've heard the story. Reverend Sarah refers to it, not often, but occasionally during her sermons, either directly or indirectly. When she's talking about TWEBA, she talks about how I was ill and how we fixed me up. She takes credit for that, But if, from my point of view, I was the guy sitting there in the hospital bed, and, she just thinks I was the guinea pig for her, potions and mysticism. Before I begin, I want to talk about 3 things, and I call these explanatory notes, and they're important to me. In no way, when I give this story, am I saying that people who have cancer or leukemia, that's what I had, or any other illness, is that they're somehow not fighting hard enough, that they're not wanting it hard enough, that I wanted to live more, that I was tougher, or even more horrible in my mind is that I had some kind of secret moral strength. I don't, okay? I am an example, not the exception. And that's really important to remember, because I know when I see people who do fantastic things and have these fantastic circumstances, I'm like, whoa, that guy, whoa, that woman, that person. But I just want to make sure you understand that I'm giving you an example, not an exception to life. I just happened to run through these circumstances that were life or death. I happened to have a partner who was assisting me, And it becomes important that at the beginning, Sarah was just my partner. And I know I'm time constrained, but I have to tell this story. So I'm dying, and we're not married, but we've been together like 10 years. I don't know whose name was on the deed of the house, and which car was owned by whom, and which bank account who had access to. So we figured it'd be a lot easier after I was dead for Sarah. One less thing for her to worry about was the legalities of partnership versus marriage. So fortunately, our Qigong master in the 1970s had written off to some place in California and gotten himself ordained, which allowed him to perform marriages in Maryland. So after class one Sunday, in the middle of chemo actually, we got married after class, and it was nice, and somebody baked a cake, and one of the kids came as a witness and that sort of thing, and because I was dying, and then I lived. So I love telling that joke. The other thing is, the last explanatory note is that I won't speculate on matters that I don't, quote unquote, know for myself. Okay, everything I'm telling you is things that I know for me from my gut and my own experience with TWEBA and my health experience. So I'm relaying those things. I'm not relaying something and then giving it a name or describing it because I read that in a book and that must have been what happened, or I saw somebody talk about it online. The result of that is I'm very confident in what I'm saying to you for myself, and you take it or leave it, use it in whatever framework and the language that you have. But I'm just relaying my own life and my own situation. So we're going to go over some of the central questions really quickly, just to have the framework and understand. We all here believe in the oneness of all things, right? That's a unity concept. We believe the universe is abundant, connected, and responsive. And we have learned from Reverend Sarah and the founders of Unity, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, that we can create the substance of the universe into physical form. Now, I truly believe that, and I believe that for a long time, prior to even this incident. And it becomes kind of important because when we talk about TWEBA, one of the TWEBAs is belief. So I actually believe that. And I hear people say, well, it doesn't literally mean that you can, make a toaster appear. And yeah, it doesn't. I don't think it's going to transform down like in Star Trek and there's a toaster. But I do believe that if you need a toaster and you TWEBA it, then you'll get a toaster in some weird, unusual way that you'll say, oh, what a coincidence, that I don't believe is a coincidence at all. So I want to put that out there. This is the way I came into the situation. And our spiritual energy flows most easily when our soul and our mind and our body are in harmony, not in conflict. That's TWEBA. Thoughts, words, emotions, behaviors, actions. I knew that. Beliefs, and actions. Yeah, I knew that. Just a little nervous. You know why I'm nervous? Because last night Sarah said, do you know what you're going to wear tomorrow? Because this is a Toastmaster thing, you always want to be comfortable and all. So this morning, she was asking me something, and she said, "You ready?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm ready to go." And she's like, "Hey, kind of casual." So then I'm like, well, I got 5 minutes left, and I'm looking in my closet, half going in there, half not going in there. So you're getting casually dressed Jeff here on the TWEBA. So I labeled this section the central question because you might wonder, as I do and as I did, if everything's one and the universe is plentiful, and we can access this abundance and change the physical form, and we believe we can align ourselves, then, leads to the obvious question, right? Does anyone know what the obvious question is? No, not how you do that. Ruin my joke. The obvious question is, so where's my $1,000,000? Right? And I joke about that, but that's a framework I use because I say to myself, okay, where's my $1,000,000? And I'm like, oh, well, because I got an issue with money here. And I got an issue because of the way my mom talked about money or the perception I had of some kid in high school or what I read. Okay, so where's my $1,000,000 for me is a great question to examine these other issues. And so when I talk about TWEBA and when I think about TWEBA and when Sarah and I talk about it, we often say, hey, where's my $1,000,000? And it's just code for that. It's code for alignment, getting into alignment, and identifying what your blocks are. For me, alignment has two aspects. The first aspect is past Jeff, everything up until this very moment that I'm speaking right now, all the things where there can be restrictions and blockages. Those are my terms. You might use karma, present life karma, past life karma. If you're a Buddhist, you might use illusion. But for me, I use blockages and restrictions because in the Qigong world, you're always talking about flow. It's what stops flow is a blockage. So everything that brings me to right here so I can get in alignment. Then there's a second relationship, and that's my alignment with the universe, because that's what you're asking it for, right? The substance of the universe. You're asking to do something. You're sort of demanding it. It's a funny ask. I can't get into this today, but I'd love to talk about asking. It's like a landlord asks the tenant for rent. That's what you do to the universe. That's what I do to the universe. It's a weird kind of ask. It's kind of demand, but it's really an ask. But it's kind of a demand. And what it really is, I think, is that you're the landlord and you're like, I give you a place to live and you live here and I keep it, up to date for you. And then you give me the rent. And what I'm asking you, as from the landlord's point of view, is to make the universe right. You have a spot, you're living there, and you give me something for it, that's the rent. And when I ask, I'm asking you to make the universe right. That's a really important concept that is all I can really say about it today, but it becomes important when you're in alignment to then be able to ask for something, not just kind of wait there and, be passive about it. I think for me, the thing about TWEBA that's not realized is it's a somewhat aggressive, demanding type of alignment that you have with the universe. And the universe doesn't care. It's fine with it. That's how you speak to the universe. So, speaking to the universe is something that I've thought about for decades. Like, how do you do that? How do you communicate? And like all things, I have a little saying in my own mind that puts it into perspective. It reminds me of the things I think about stuff. And has anyone ever wondered why God doesn't speak English? I mean, why do we have to pray in a certain way? And why don't we just, get our messages from God as a little message instead of intuition, instead of alignment and that sort of thing? And I just think it's a funny little interesting question that reminds me that I have to work with something I don't fully understand and align myself with something I don't fully understand. So I have to try this. I have to try that. In my early days, before we used the word TWEBA, when I was able to obtain things from the universe, for lack of a better term, I would try to remember. I'd be like, oh, you know what? That worked here. Uh, it's a long story, but like I'm literally walking down the street, going to work, and on the sidewalk in front of me is a TV. And, I had been complaining and I had done a lot of work. We didn't have a freaking TV. We don't have TVs, but I wanted to watch a football game and I couldn't, so I was pissed off about it. So I'm like, I freaking put the universe right. Universe, give me a freaking TV. I got a job. I've been working hard. I live in the suburbs. And I literally found a TV that I then ended up using that was on the sidewalk. So I tried to remember like where I was, how I felt. I tried to memorize literally where I was when I made that request. So I can say, oh, okay, that's the language, okay? That's the non-English language of being in alignment. This happened a number of times, and it becomes somewhat important in my practice because I have to remember to be in that right spot. And I can be in that spot and say, ooh, this isn't right here. The words aren't right. The beliefs aren't right. The actions aren't right. I'm TWEBA in that. So I think that's important. Okay, my story, which is what people ask me about all the time, and it's hard for me to talk about, that's why I've been delaying, because it's real personal. It's just a funny kind of thing. I'm talking about my blood and guts, and, I talk to you about a lot of stuff, a lot of other stuff, but like, talking about my bone marrow with you, gotta take a breath here. All right. So, the other thing, as I lead into this, is that TWEBA is not a one-time event. I didn't TWEBA something and live, and then therefore, like the rest of my life, everything's in TWEBA and aligned, and I get everything I want. It's very specific to what the ask is. It's very specific to where you are. Different blockages for different things. I can't get $1 million because I got a blockage about money. I mean, I can fix my health and cure my leukemia, but I got an issue about money, and that prevents me from getting that $1 million. So, I'm sick. We're doing like the standard unity stuff. Sarah's guiding me, and nothing's really working. I mean, we're doing the right words, the affirmative prayer. We got the prayer chaplains at the church we were involved in at the time doing stuff, but there was like a missing element. It wasn't really there. And Sarah did a lot of discernments, and she did a lot of work, and she developed this idea of TWEBA. And so she started working on me. Now, I'm really sick. And I had a little resistance. So she would work on me, talk to me, and I had no ability to like say, I'm tired of this, I'm gonna go or walk. So I was like this guinea pig that was captured, but not in a bad way. I didn't really mean that to be funny, but you guys are laughing. So the first thing we worked on was TWEBA-ing the best available care. Okay, not that I was healthy, which was the standard unity thing, because I wasn't healthy. The best available care. And we worked on this. We got our thoughts in line, our words, our emotions, our beliefs, our actions, kept going over and over and over. We go into the doctors, and our doctor's not available. They're going to give us this other guy. And you know how it is. You kind of get a relationship with your doctor. So it's like, geez, here I am dying, and the doctor's, busy. They'll give me the other guy. So this guy turns out to be great. Turns out that he plays golf and is friends with the world expert in my particular narrow, rare kind of leukemia. And they're doing a study down at NIH. We live about 5 miles. We were in Rockville at the time. So he says, do you want to look into this, which was, I remember that was an odd question. And like, yeah. Let's see, die or join a study 5 miles away? Yeah, we're going to go study. And so he's on his little pad, and I'm watching him, and he emails Dr. Kreitman, who becomes my doctor. And that was sort of a big thing, because that was the first time we had applied the TWEBA procedure consistently and worked on the restrictions and blockages that we came up with, both of us, and actually, literally saw immediate results. So we started TWEBA-ing everything. Can you get into the study? Which is it's a crazy process. So it takes 3 weeks of intensive medical stuff before they'll accept you into their study. I mean, the real reason, I believe, maybe I'm a cynical person, is because they don't want you dying during their study of some unrelated illness, right? You ruin their stats. Okay, they're going to follow you over time. And remember, this I got 5 years to live, maybe 10. Okay, and so we were like, okay, well, we got to get into the study. So after 3 weeks, we're going every other day. They're taking literally gallons of blood. MRIs, CAT scans, ultrasounds, all kinds of other stuff you're giving day after day on a treadmill with breathing stuff, breathing in certain ways so they can see your guts collapse and then how quickly they come back. All kinds of kind of cool stuff. But, I wasn't thinking in those ways. So we TWEBA'd that I'd get in, we get in. So then, what's the last thing you want to happen? Because they're getting good results from this. Exactly. You don't want to be in the control group, right? That would really stink. So we TWEBA'd not being in the controlled group. And high-tech stuff, this is how they determine if you're in the control group and which protocol you get. They have a phone number that calls up a random number generator. And if you get a certain number, like even or odd or whatever, then you get put into a certain category. So we had to TWEBA that. We got into it. We're doing all our stuff, and everything's cool. I'm going to be saved. But for me, that was all preliminary, because I was a little out of it, a little unconscious of all this. Sarah's working me over with the TWEBA, and she's just developing it. So it's not like she's like, let's TWEBA this, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what that is. She's literally developing this at this time period based upon our frustration with the way it was going. We were doing everything right according to Unity, but the results were not where we wanted to be. For me, the rubber hits the road when it actually comes to getting the chemo, and that's the example that I'm going to talk about today. I had very little energy at the time. I was 40 pounds less than I am now. Just to give you some stats to kind of non-medically put it into some sort of category. You all have platelet counts of about 160. I'm not sure which scale they're using, but it's about 160. And they're one of the 3 components of your blood. So so 160's here, right? I had 9. Okay. 100% of your white blood cells, whatever that average is. I had 20% working. Okay, and even those were kind of enfeebled. As I call it, that's not a medical term. Your red blood cells carry your oxygen, right? And that feeds everything. So my life was on a dimmer switch. It's not just, your energy, but it's your perceptions. It's literally what you see and smell and feel. It's like a dimmer switch slowly going down. So you're kind of in the world, but you're kind of like, I don't know, on drugs in a way. You're kind of out of it, But what's amazing to me is I was going to work. Who knows what they thought about this lunatic? I'm like really in bad shape, and I'm going to meetings, and I'm meeting with people, and making decisions. They were like, yeah, that's just that guy. That's what he's like. So I'm in bad shape. Okay? And I think that actually becomes an important point for us today. Not because the lack of resistance I had and energy to put to resistance was a circumstance of my physical being at the time. It wasn't because I was able to do a lot of things. In a moment, we're going to talk about the resistance I did have to certain things. And remember in the beginning, I said, we're going to talk about an example where I'm here with no resistance, so I'm able, no blocks, I'm able to do TWEBA and have these wonderful things happen. I got there by this weird process. I'm not recommending it, but we're just saying that, look at this, get yourself from here to there in a process, and wonderful things can happen. So, we go into chemo the first day, and at NIH, National Institute of Health, National Cancer Center, these folks are wonderful. It's great. It's 5 minutes. It's 5 miles from the house, so we don't even have to mess with all the travel. It's free, because they're experimenting on the citizenry. And that worked for us. No messing with insurance companies. None of that hassle. And these treatments are super expensive. If we had insurance, it would still have cost us a fortune. The first day we go in, and we're TWEBAing, and I'm like a little ball. Sarah's like packs me up into the car and she drives me down there. And now it's like January, February, and it's cold. And she unpacks me, and you park underneath the buildings at NIH. So you're in this weird kind of old parking garage, and you come up stairs, and she's telling me, what do we think? Okay, what words are we going to use? What do we believe about this process? Now, what are we going to do? What's our activity? What's our behaviors? All that sort of stuff. What are your emotions about it? We go in, I get the chemotherapy. It takes forever. It's so late by the time they brew it up in the basement. They make their own chemo in the basement. Somebody's laughing. So I call it the basement. I don't know where they make it. They make it at NIH. And they always say, we'll call it up, which is just kind of medical. But in my mind, we're calling it up from the basement. There's a laboratory down there. It looks like the Frankenstein movies. Okay, there's 2 antenna with like electricity going through, and then there's always like a clear beaker. It's kind of like a greenish liquid with bubbles. That's what I'm thinking. So they're brewing up my chemo, my personal chemo, down in the basement, and they send it up. By the time they send it up, because it takes all day, it's like 2 a.m. All right, we're supposed to start today, and we're like, come on, let's get started. It's 2 a.m. Everyone's gone. It's Sarah, me, and a young nurse. And she was not that big. It becomes important in a moment. I have an open port, because they're doing stuff all day, and she puts the chemo in. I don't like it. Okay, I can feel it going. I remember first I feel it going down my arms, and I'm like, oh, that's yucky. And then it's like going through here, and it's just foreign. It's like, how many, do people not like black licorice? Okay, you know how it's yucky? That's what chemo was like. It was like black licorice for me going through my veins, and I rebelled. I resisted. I took whatever little bit of energy I had, and I wasn't having it. So I start, my muscles start spasming. First my arm, and then my like shoulder and stuff. And I remember my whole body starts spasming. And then I'm fighting the spasms. I remember like, don't be a dork, and then spasm on the bed. The nurse was kind of cute, so so I'm like spasming. I'm like, I'm that guy, and I'm resisting this. And the nurse jumps on top of me, trying to get me so I don't pop off the bed. And then she's trying to get the Dilaudid, which is like just heroin, and get it into the port to calm me down. And Sarah like pushes her off and jumps on me because she's bigger and stronger to like lock me down, so that the nurse can actually get the syringe to put it in the port. And of course, then it was fine. I mean, that stuff is effective. I told Sarah, I said, I think I'm in love with the nurse. And she's like, it's probably the drugs. I'm like, no, I think I really am. So, let's be clear. At this stage, I'm obviously not in alignment, right? We TWEBA'd a lot of stuff, but I'm resisting. I'm convulsing on the thing. Who knows what effect this is or isn't having as I resist every molecule of the thing I've been trying to get for the last couple months. And Sarah and I come home. It's rough because, they had to give me drugs so that I could breathe because muscle relaxer kind of stuff, because my whole body's wrecked from the rigors. That's what they call it, the rigors. Like rigor mortis, the muscles get all stiff and stuff. Well, these are like, it's related to that. They call it the rigors. And then they had to give me drug because I couldn't breathe and your lungs aren't able to expand and, mucus builds up and stuff. So I'm in bad shape, curled into my little ball. And Sarah and I are, discussing it. It's very bad time. And whenever we TWEBA'd, when it became to like, your emotions about it and your thoughts about it, it was like, I don't like it. I don't want that licorice. I don't want that in me. I've had a bad experience. No, 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 no. And was kind of stuck there. So at a certain point, just out of nowhere, I got this idea. And I said, what if the chemo is like a mercenary force? It's brought in to do a dirty job, in this case, kill cancer cells, in real life, much worse things. What if I think of it as a mercenary force that I am inviting in, paying to come in here, inviting in to do a job, and then to move out when it's done? And so we kind of keyed in on that. Here's an important point that I didn't really think of until I was developing this presentation. For some of you, this is why it's so personal, and I'm just an example, and you have to develop your own details here. For some of you, thinking, well, I'm going to say my chemo is a mercenary force, is something that you rebel against, because you have a negative connotation of mercenaries. And I kind of think we all do. My particular background gave me a slightly different point of view on mercenaries. My grandfather, Ivan Kosich, was a Ukrainian captain in the cavalry. And you've heard of the Cossacks. His last name was literally Kosich. And he fought he was hired by the Tsar, the Russian Tsar. This is right before, this is around World War I time, during. And they went up there and they were fighting during the Russian Revolution, the internal revolution, as mercenaries. He ended up marrying a Russian royalty, and there's a long story how my family got to the United States. But my point is, in my mind, I thought that's kind of cool. That's my grandfather, even though I never met him. So as we're sitting there, and I'm like, well, these guys can be mercenaries. They can come in, they can do whatever. I didn't have a mental resistance or block on that terminology or that particular type of situation. I'm belaboring this point because I think it's really important. We all have things that are more obvious and more subtle, more on the surface, more hidden, that create the blocks. I was fortunate to hit upon something that might have not worked for somebody else, but for me, it was something that I could easily not resist. I could welcome. All right, so, I'm telling Sarah, well, maybe that's the way to think about this stuff. Maybe that's the way that we can get rid of this blockage, because I don't want to go back. I'm wrecked. I don't want more chemo. So we're going to go in there. This is what we're going to do. So we go in there. We're in the car on the way down. Sarah's like, "What do you think? What are your words? How are you going to say it? What are your emotions about it? What are your beliefs about it? And what are your actions going to be?" She's just drilling me and drilling me and drilling me. And like I said, I didn't have the energy to say enough. We just kept going. We go back to the next chemo session. I remember laying there saying, "Okay, I can feel you guys. Come on in. I know you're going to do some auxiliary damage, just like the mercenary force does. They kill people's pigs and cows and eat them as they're doing their thing. They don't care about the collateral damage there. But I'm like, come on in, do your stuff, go into the bone marrow, address the leukemia and the issues and everything." And so that was okay. So it's going to be 8 weeks of chemo. This is the second week, the one disaster week, and now the okay week. We're TWEBAing it on the way home and whatever for the next day or two. We get an email from the doctor, Dr. Kreitman. And it seems like, things are going well. And we're like, hey, that's good. You see that email from Dr. Kreitman? He seems happy with the way it's going. And we're like, yeah, okay, yeah, good deal. So we go in like another day or two to see him. And, he's not he's a nice guy, but he's not friendly or in that way. He's pretty scientific. And he's I remember he's sitting on a chair, he's looking at us, and he's like, da-da-da-da-da-da, giving a bunch of numbers and stuff. And he's like, "And so you got my email?" And, I don't know if it was me or Sarah said, "Yeah, we didn't quite understand what you meant." And he's like, and all his sub-doctors and the nurses are all there, and they're all in this little thing. They all came in for this meeting, which is a little unusual. And he's like, "Well, we can't detect any level of leukemia anywhere in your body, in the bone marrow, in your blood, anywhere." He's like, "It's an amazing response, at this point." He goes, they use the term full remission. I use the term cured. They won't use that medically. He goes, "You're in full remission." And, Sarah and I are like, yeah, we TWEBA'd it. No, I didn't want to be in that case. And, I remember we either asked or he said, "Well, we're going to go through the whole protocol because we have to. For their sake. Now it's not for my sake anymore." And from that point on, it was just recovery, which took a long time because I was in bad shape. I think it is incorrect to say, well, you got the chemo. Now remember, the chemo, the standard care, only going to give you 5 years anyway, and this is 12 years ago. And even the experimental one was unsure how long that would last. And it's been 12 years. I'm still in full remission. It would be a mistake to think it was the chemo, because we didn't even go through the chemo. We didn't even have the standard of care, which still had another 6 weeks, let alone the experimental for another 6 weeks. there's not really any way you're going to convince me it wasn't the work that we did together. Two people aligned on one thing, getting rid of our resistances and going there. And this is the kind of result you can have. That's over here, okay? And it's an example. It's not an exception. The difficult part is to get from here, blockages, resistance, our life, to here. But I hope that by seeing this and hearing this story, that folks will have the confidence that the hard work, and it is hard work, examining all these things, has a point where you can go. Not that you'll get sick and fix yourself, but for whatever you want to ask for, physical or not physical. I think that's why I said, yeah, I'll talk to people, and I'll see what they can get out of the story, and I'll talk to them, like I said, outside of this context, because we don't have a lot of time. If you have to remember one thing, remember, hey, that guy who told us that kind of cool story says he's an example, not an exception. You guys can all do this, okay, in a variety of different ways. You're probably doing it, you don't realize it. If you think, oh, what a coincidence, I was hoping for this. What a coincidence, I was wanting that. Then you're doing it. Those are the areas you are TWEBAing. You are in alignment and you're asking the universe. You just think, well, that's just mundane, everyday things, I wanted wanted a new car and I wanted them to have a red one. They didn't, and the guy called me up 2 days later and said, hey, we just got a red one in. That's TWEBA. Pay attention to those things. Use those things and expand upon them. We're gonna do a real quick meditation because, my example is physical based. We're going to do a physical heart meditation here. Very short, maybe 5 minutes, maybe not even that long. And it's about remembering, who you are, which is a physical being in a non-physical world. It's a heart meditation. And I'm going to tell you, it's not like any heart meditation you've ever done. I guarantee it, because as far as I know, I'm the only one who does it. Kind of made it up. You'd be my guinea pigs. The goal is to help you connect with your physical and non-physical world. We've all seen on TV, online, hearts when they do open heart surgery, or like animations. The heart is like boom, 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 boom. It wiggles a lot, right? It's a big muscle right in your chest, and it's just jiggling around. And I always say, well, it's right there, right? It's right there on all you guys. How come I can't feel all this jiggling? Why am I unaware of this humongous muscle that's pumping life force through me in my own chest? And that sort of disconnect of who we think we are and our physical nature, I think is one of the issues that creates resistance and unclarity when we're in TWEBA. So all I want to do is take a couple breaths, and then we're just going to sit there and feel our heart. We're not going to feel our blood pumping through our neck or our hand or in our ears, which you might initially. I want you to actually see if you can find your heart and then feel it wiggling around in there. All right? All right, so take a breath. One or two more if you need to. Still yourself in any way that you still yourself. You may first just be feeling it through your veins or arteries. You may be hearing it. But try to actually move your consciousness into your heart space. And feel that wiggle. if you can find it, you just kind of sit with it. Say, oh my, that's wiggling in there every day. Okay. You can slowly come out of that. You can do this at any time. It's easier at the beginning when you're still, sitting, but, you're a passenger in a car. I used to do a lot of my meditations and all when I took the train and the metro from Rockville to D.C. for decades. And that was my time to work on these things, various things. I was that weird guy doing these funny little breathing things kind of secretly, But, you have time. This one, if you get used to it, you find your heart. One of the other things that happened at NIH that I think is important for me, you guys find your own method, is that I was able to see all my internals. Because you're watching the CT scan there, they're doing it. The MRI, you can see the sheets they come in. The ultrasound, you're seeing your insides and all. I was just like looking for a little baby. Maybe twins, but no, they were. And for me, that centered me in a physical world that was my physical world. Not in a book, but I use those actually when I am trying to fix some ailment. But this was mine. So you can get your own. If you can feel your own heart, feel your own insides, then it's much more real, and it helps in getting alignment. I want to thank you all for listening to my story. I really appreciate it. And the folks who are online also, because a number of folks aren't here, and they said, hey, we're going to listen in. I love you guys. I appreciate it. And thank you. Okay.